What if I told you that in today's world, stupidity isn't just tolerated, it's rewarded, celebrated even. It's as if the more outrageous, shallow, or proudly ignorant someone is, the more likely they are to rise, to fame, influence, power. That might sound like an exaggeration, but take a second and look around. When was the last time deep thought trended online? When did a philosopher go viral for nuance and complexity? Instead, what dominates your feed? Quick clips, flashy edits, loud personalities offering zero substance. We now live in a culture that favors empty spectacle over intellectual depth. And no, this isn't just a blip. It's a shift, a deep, structural one. We've built a digital ecosystem where memes get more attention than well-argued points, where a 15-second reaction video outperforms a thoughtful essay, and where influencers with nothing to say are treated like leaders. It's not just harmless entertainment, it's become our cultural blueprint. And this isn't happening by accident. The systems we've built, the platforms, the algorithms, the incentives, they all push one message. Be fast, be emotional, be entertaining, but whatever you do, don't be complex, don't be serious, don't be thoughtful. Why? Because complexity doesn't sell. Reflection doesn't go viral. Critical thinking takes too long, and we're addicted to the short and shallow. We scroll past wisdom to watch a prank. We ignore depth because it takes effort. But that effort is exactly what we're losing. And with it, our collective ability to think, question, and grow. Here's what's really dangerous. Stupidity today isn't just a passive trait. It's a strategy. Being loud, impulsive, controversial, that's a business model. Playing dumb has become a brand. And in an attention economy, it's a highly profitable one. You don't need to be informed to go viral. You just need to be extreme. Say something outrageous, slap a dramatic thumbnail on it, and suddenly you've got followers, sponsorships, influence. Why bother with accuracy when attention pays more? Why bother being real when being ridiculous gets you further? This is the cultural algorithm now. Truth is slow, lies are fast, insight is hard, drama is easy, and the platforms we use every day are designed to reward what's easy. That's why we see politicians ditching real policy for punchy catchphrases, why entertainers fake drama to boost engagement, why influencers perform personas they know aren't real, because authenticity is slow, and slow doesn't trend. And the more we consume this, the more it reshapes what we think is valuable. Suddenly, being thoughtful is elitist. Being smart is boring. We don't just ignore intellectuals, we distrust them. We label scientists as out of touch, dismiss educators as irrelevant, and mock anyone who challenges us to think deeply. We've created a world where fast beats true, where outrage beats facts, and where thinking has been replaced by reacting. And this isn't just a cultural issue, it's psychological. Think about it. The world feels overwhelming, the news is heavy, everything feels complicated. So when something simple, funny, or familiar shows up in your feed, your brain says, thank you. That little dopamine hit tells you this is safe, this is easy, this is what you need. It's called the fluency effect. Our brains like things that are easy to process, and the easier something is to digest, the more we believe it must be true, even when it isn't. So we click, we swipe, we double tap, and without realizing it, we begin to crave what's easy and reject what's challenging. We stop reading long articles. We avoid anything that demands focus. Documentaries feel like homework. Philosophy feels outdated. Deep conversation feels too slow. The more we consume fast content, the more we rewire ourselves for speed, and the harder it becomes to slow down. And that's where the real danger lies. Not just in what we're watching, but in what we're becoming. Because when humor becomes a shield and irony becomes our default language, we lose the ability to engage with anything real. We laugh at things that should make us think. We scroll past ideas that should make us pause. And we start mistaking distraction for peace. It's not that people don't care, it's that they're exhausted. And shallow content is like fast food. It's cheap, it's addictive, and it feels good in the moment. But it leaves us starving for meaning. And the worst part? The system is designed this way. None of this is accidental. The platforms want you hooked, not thinking, just scrolling, just consuming. Because the more time you spend scrolling, the more ads you see. The longer you stay online, the more money someone makes. In truth, that's just background noise. Social media doesn't care if you learn something. It doesn't care if what you're watching is good for you. It only cares that you don't stop watching. That's why controversy goes viral. That's why rage bait works. That's why fake drama beats real discussion. Because emotional reactions, anger, envy, fear, keep you glued. And nuance? Nuance is too slow, too subtle, too boring. So ask yourself this: when did we start confusing noise with knowledge? When did visibility become more important than value? And how long can a culture survive when it rewards ignorance more than wisdom? We are living in a system that profits from distraction, that encourages you to be shallow, that turns stupidity into spectacle. And unless we recognize that, we're going to wake up in a world where deep thinking isn't just rare, it's dangerous, where truth is inconvenient, where silence is replaced by noise, where being thoughtful becomes a liability. But it doesn't have to be that way. Here's where things get darker. We're not just rewarding stupidity, we've industrialized it. Ignorance is now a business strategy. There's a blueprint for going viral by saying nothing at all. Just loud enough, just dramatic enough, just fake enough. The dumb but rich persona is no accident. It's a brand, and it works. In a world where attention is currency, playing dumb is smart economics. You see it everywhere. The people dominating the spotlight aren't necessarily insightful or wise. They're entertaining. Not in a meaningful way, but in a way that hooks you emotionally. Outrage sells, scandals spread, flash beats substance every single time. And beneath all that noise is a quiet but disturbing truth. Being real isn't profitable anymore. Being loud is. So the question becomes, why think deeply when exaggeration pays better? Why do the work when posturing gets you more clicks? Why wrestle with ideas when it's easier to play a character? We've built an environment where it's smarter to act stupid, and more people than ever are catching on. It's not just a performance, it's a pathology, a cultural sickness we've normalized. Anti-intellectualism isn't on the fringe anymore, it's mainstream. The message is clear: don't be too serious. Don't ask hard questions. Don't dig too deep. Be funny, be dramatic, be superficial. That's what wins. And the platforms, they're designed to support this. They reward the fast, the reactive, the emotionally charged. Not because it's helpful, but because it keeps you scrolling. A sarcastic meme will always outperform a nuanced explanation. A conspiracy theory will always spread faster than a peer-reviewed study. Why? Because lies are easier, truth is heavy. And in a world addicted to stimulation, people will choose the easy lie over the hard truth almost every time. We've built a machine that punishes depth and glorifies spectacle. That doesn't just overlook complexity, it actively resists it. And the cost is devastating. We're not just losing time, we're losing our appetite for thinking, our ability to hold multiple ideas at once, our patience for anything that doesn't deliver a dopamine hit. Look around. So much of what passes for influence now is manufactured. Fake lifestyles, scripted drama, artificial authenticity. Millions of followers built on nothing but surface. Meanwhile, the people with something real to say, they get buried in the algorithm. Too slow, too complicated, too honest. Ask yourself again, when did we start rewarding people for knowing less? When did intelligence become a liability? And what happens when a generation starts believing that being thoughtful makes you uncool? That asking questions makes you annoying? That being curious makes you dangerous? That's not just a trend, that's a crisis. Because once stupidity becomes a badge of honor, truth stops mattering. And when truth dies, so does trust. And when trust disappears, society falls apart. But let's zoom out further. Let's talk about why this is happening, not just culturally, but psychologically. Because deep down, simplicity feels good. The world right now is overwhelming. Our lives are filled with chaos, economic uncertainty, political instability, mental health struggles, climate anxiety. Most of us feel like we're just barely keeping it together. So when we come across something shallow, something quick and easy, it feels like relief. That 10-second video, it gives us a break. That joke, that meme, that funny reel, it doesn't challenge us. It comforts us. It tells us, you don't have to think right now, and that's seductive. In a storm of complexity, the simple feels like safety. But that safety is an illusion. Psychologists call it the fluency effect. The easier something is to process, the more we believe it must be true. That's why we fall for fake news. That's why we believe bold headlines over subtle explanations. Because our brains reward what feels easy, not what is accurate. And the more overwhelmed we feel, the more we crave that ease. Not because we're lazy, but because we're tired. We choose the path of least resistance. We laugh instead of reflect. We scroll instead of sit with our thoughts. We avoid friction. And over time, that avoidance becomes a habit. We become mentally allergic to effort. Even humor becomes a form of self-protection. We joke about things we're actually scared of, our future, our politics, even death. Not because we find them funny, but because laughing is easier than facing the weight of those fears. Sarcasm becomes our shield, irony becomes our armor, and depth becomes a threat. Not because people don't care, but because they're in survival mode. And here's the kicker. Shallow content hits our brains like junk food. It gives us that instant dopamine spike. Every like, every share, every click. It's a little hit. It rewards us now. No patience, no reflection, just pleasure. And just like junk food, it's addictive. The more we consume, the more we crave. And the harder it becomes to return to what nourishes us. A long-form article feels like a chore. A slow documentary feels like a punishment. A thoughtful conversation feels like work. Why? Because the algorithm has retrained our brains to seek stimulation, not insight. And so here we are, a society rewired for speed, simplicity, and spectacle. Not because we're inherently shallow, but because the system taught us that shallow is safer, that depth is dangerous, that speed is better than thought. And maybe that's the most dangerous lesson of all, that effort isn't worth it. Because once you believe that, you stop growing, you stop learning, you stop challenging yourself. You become a passive consumer of noise. You don't think, you react. And if you're not careful, you'll wake up one day and realize you don't even remember how to sit with a difficult idea. How to hold a thought for longer than a few seconds. How to engage in something that doesn't instantly reward you. But here's the part we avoid admitting. This isn't just about individuals making bad choices. It's about a system that was designed from the ground up to make this happen. The social platforms, the content economy, the attention marketplace. It's all rigged, not accidentally, intentionally. This system we're all living in, it doesn't reward truth. It doesn't reward wisdom or nuance or thoughtfulness. It rewards what keeps you scrolling, what keeps you engaged. Not because it's good for you, but because it's profitable. The more you stay on the app, the more ads they can show you. That's it. That's the whole business model. Your attention is being bought and sold every second of the day. And what captures attention? Outrage, envy, jealousy, lust, fear. Not critical thinking, not curiosity, not complexity. The algorithm doesn't ask, is this true? It asks, will this keep them here? And that single question shapes everything. It decides what gets seen, what gets buried, what goes viral, what dies in silence. That's why ignorance spreads so fast. It's easy, it's entertaining, it hits your emotions hard and fast. Meanwhile, truth has to walk into the room slowly, explain itself, and often get ignored anyway. And the market follows right along. The entertainment industry doesn't exist to uplift, it exists to monetize. Chaos sells, stupidity performs better than brilliance. A fake fight between influencers gets more views than a conversation with a Nobel Prize winner. A drama-filled live stream outpaces a groundbreaking documentary. Why? Because drama is digestible. Complexity is not. Even the news media, once the gatekeeper of truth, has transformed. Headlines are written to provoke, not inform. Stories are simplified to black and white conflicts. Nuance gets lost. And the loudest voices, they're not the wisest, they're the most polarizing. The ones who can take fear, blame, uncertainty, and wrap them into a 15-second soundbite. And politics? It's now more about performance than policy. The more extreme your position, the more attention you get. Governing has become a stage. Politicians have become influencers. They tweet more than they legislate. And voters, Many are just choosing based on emotion, not evidence. We're not electing thinkers anymore. We're electing entertainers. And in a culture where the most visible person wins, not the most competent, we lose more than just elections. We lose wisdom. We lose direction. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if it seems like the world's spinning faster and the voices getting louder are also getting dumber, know this, it's not your fault. You're not imagining it. We're living inside a machine that's built to reward distraction, not depth. But, and here's the crucial part, some people are starting to wake up. Not loudly, not with hashtags or slogans, but quietly, intentionally. A new resistance is forming. A resistance that isn't about shouting over the noise, but about stepping away from it entirely. They call it digital minimalism. A growing movement, especially among the younger generation, of people who are choosing to reclaim their minds. They're deleting social media, cutting screen time, reading long-form books, journaling, practicing mindfulness, relearning how to sit with boredom, how to focus, how to go deep again. They're not escaping, they're reconnecting. Because they've realized that constant stimulation isn't enriching their lives, it's numbing them, making them more anxious, more reactive, more disconnected from themselves. And it's not just individuals. There's a quiet revival of long-form content happening, podcasts that last hours, YouTube channels that reject viral hooks in favor of real deep conversation. Lex Friedman, Andrew Huberman, Sam Harris. These aren't flashy creators, they're thinkers. And millions are tuning in, not because they're trendy, but because people are starving for substance. Turns out, we do want to think. We do want to go deep. We just needed someone to remind us that it's still possible. Even education, once written off as obsolete, is reinventing itself in unexpected places. While mainstream universities chase corporate partnerships and cut liberal arts programs, smaller colleges and independent thinkers are bringing philosophy back. Logic, rhetoric, ethics, not for job security, but for soul security. Students are reading Plato and Nietzsche and Marcus Aurelius, not because it'll help them land a salary, but because it helps them understand who they are. Because in a world addicted to chaos, learning how to think clearly isn't a luxury, it's survival. In the self-help world, even that's evolving. Sure, there are still influencers selling dopamine hacks and shortcut success formulas, but beneath that noise, a deeper wave is forming. More people are journaling, meditating, practicing stoicism, not for hustle culture, but for clarity, for inner peace. Not every answer is online. Not every solution is a life hack. Sometimes what we really need is to slow down, unplug, and remember what it feels like to be present in our own lives. And that is the quiet revolution. It doesn't scream, it doesn't trend, but it's real. People are choosing stillness over stimulation, depth over distraction, meaning over metrics. They're doing it in book clubs, in late-night conversations, in slow walks without earbuds, in choosing silence over endless content. They're asking questions like, what kind of life do I want to live? What kind of mind do I want to have? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? These are not trending topics, but they're timeless. And here's the beautiful irony. In an age obsessed with quick content, these are the people building something that will last. Because culture doesn't change top-down, it changes from the inside out. One decision at a time, one honest conversation at a time, one refusal to perform stupidity at a time. This isn't about being better than anyone. It's not about judging others. It's about reclaiming what was once sacred. Your own attention, your own thoughts, your own values. The world doesn't need more influencers shouting into the void. It needs more people willing to think, reflect, and live deliberately. Even when nobody's watching, especially then. So when you feel like giving up, when you feel like intelligence is dead and depth doesn't matter, remember this. Every quiet act of thoughtfulness is a rebellion. Every time you choose to reflect instead of react, to read instead of scroll, to speak truth instead of what's popular, you're doing something revolutionary. You're keeping the flame of wisdom alive. So what do you do in a world where being shallow is rewarded and being thoughtful feels like exile? You don't fight the noise with more noise. You don't try to out-yell the chaos. You live differently. Not louder, deeper. Not faster, truer. You take the slower path, the one that asks more of you, the one that doesn't always feel comfortable, but always feels real. It starts with your inner dialogue, the quiet questions you ask yourself when no one else is around. Are you actually thinking, or are you just reacting? Are you curious about truth or chasing validation? Are you willing to feel intellectually uncomfortable, to entertain ideas that stretch, challenge, or even contradict you? Growth doesn't happen inside echo chambers. It happens when you step outside of them, when you let your ideas be questioned, when you risk being wrong, when you stop looking for affirmation and start seeking clarity. And that transformation, it isn't dramatic, it's small, it's subtle, but it's powerful. You begin with your habits. Maybe it's choosing to read something long, something that doesn't give you the dopamine hit, but asks you to sit with discomfort. Maybe it's watching a documentary without checking your phone, or journaling instead of doom scrolling, or simply being present during a conversation without thinking of your next reply. These are small acts, but together they reclaim your brain. Because your mind, like your body, becomes what you feed it. And then you go deeper. You seek out people, not just those who agree with you, but people who think, who care about more than just trends and algorithms. You look for community, a circle where conversations go beyond surface-level opinions, where it's okay to say, I don't know, and still be respected. A place where questions matter more than answers, where disagreement isn't war, it's exploration. Those kinds of spaces are rare, but they're growing, quietly, intentionally. People are building them online, through long-form content, deep forums, meaningful groups. And in real life, coffee shops, book clubs, walks, dinners without phones, places where presence matters more than performance, and maybe most important, your attitude. You stop pretending to be less intelligent just to make others comfortable. You stop hiding your curiosity. You stop dumbing yourself down for likes, approval, or applause. Because the longer you fake it, the easier it becomes to forget who you really are. The world doesn't need more people playing small. It needs people who are awake, who are aware, who are willing to be misunderstood in the pursuit of truth. People who understand that silence doesn't always mean ignorance, that asking questions doesn't mean weakness, that not knowing is the beginning of knowing, and when you live like that, something shifts. You stop needing to prove everything. You stop explaining yourself to people who never wanted to understand you anyway. You realize your presence, your truth, your clarity, that's enough. You don't have to justify your depth to a world addicted to noise. You don't need to shrink so someone else can feel bigger. Instead, you become a mirror, a contrast. In a culture that screams, you whisper. In a system built on distraction, you stay focused. In a world that moves fast and shallow, you move slow and deep. And yes, it's harder. It's lonelier sometimes. It's not always fun, but it's real. And when the dopamine fades and the viral moments pass, real is what remains. It becomes your anchor. So don't underestimate what you're doing when you choose to live this way. When you choose to read instead of scroll, to reflect instead of react, to disconnect from what's popular so you can reconnect with what's true. These aren't small decisions, they're radical. Because culture doesn't change top down, it shifts one mind at a time. One person choosing meaning over metrics. One voice, refusing to trade depth for applause. And if enough people do that, enough people wake up, the culture will change. We'll stop idolizing ignorance. We'll stop rewarding the outrageous. We'll stop confusing noise with knowledge. And maybe, just maybe, we'll remember what it means to be wise. So if you've made it this far in the video, you're already different. You're not here for cheap dopamine. You're here for truth, for meaning. And that's rare. So drop a comment. Let me know what part of this hit home for you.